forgive me for running off to find the one thing I have to do. And each night you can fall asleep assured that someday I'll be coming home to you.
Hello and welcome to the Skip Ace Fantasy Disc Golf Podcast, your choice for the most indie and emo intro music in disc golf. That was the Get Up Kids out of Lawrence, Kansas. Their live album is actually called Live from the Granada. And if you've been to the DDO or the GBO, you've been to the Granada Theater. And in episode 8, we're off to Kansas. The DDO, formerly the GBO, which is now a completely different event, this year they're changing up the courses selection again, and we are completely at the Emporia Country Club. No more Jones this year. The ECC is a long, open course with a lot of opportunity for OB on virtually every hole. This is honestly another thrower's paradise. And based on some really early weather reports, the wind won't be nearly the factor that we've seen it in the past. At worst, it's going to be a slightly breezy day on Friday, and it's going to be hot and humid with very limited chance for rain. So a little muggy, a little sweaty, but ultimately good golf weather. And if you want to check out Skip Ace's website later this week, there is going to be a nice course breakdown that we've been giving you. Now let's dive right into the DDO picks. Get Rick on your team. He seems healthy. He has a great history here, and he knows the course inside and out. And it's kind of his home away from home, to be honest. He hasn't finished worse here than second in the last 4 years. Make him your high-priced anchor. But if you want to save a few ratings points, you can go with Aaron Gossage. He's playing really well right now, and he finished third here last year, and we all remember the second place he took at Worlds to Macbeth. That could save you 10 or so ratings points and still keep more or less a stud on your team. As for a few lower rated players to look at, Gavin Rathbun was 8th here 2 years ago and is only rated 1021. Colton Montgomery averages 14th here over the last 4 years. Or you could, this is risky. You could go with Brody, who's been playing very well lately. Some back-to-back 15th or better positions, I think is what Statmando had come up with. And he finished third here last year. This is a really good course for him, but the conditions are going to be way different this year than they were last year. Personally, I wouldn't trust him on my team, but if you're looking for a decently priced player who is probably going to keep you in the cash, you can't go wrong with Brody. The last sleeper out here is probably Thomas Gilbert. He hasn't had the best or most flashy season, but over the last 3 years, he's averaged 20th at this event. Super deep sleeper that you may not even be looking at. 1,009 rated. Eric McCabe. EMAC himself, a very, very sneaky pick. Eric designed this course. He's been playing really well in the Masters division. But he hasn't played a DGPT event in a long time. But for only 1,009 ratings points, I would not hesitate to get him on my team. I think he's a surefire hit here. Now, some players to avoid at the Country Club. He's a DD-sponsored player, Chris Clemens. But he hasn't played well in Emporia. I would probably avoid Chris Clemens this week. Still, avoid Andrew Marweed at least one more event until we get closer to the Midwest Swing. And Double G. Avoid Double G. With all this OB, he just hasn't been able to find center fairway out there on these longer open courses in Emporia. He averages 38th place here, which is a surprise with the distance that this course has. Some FPO players. Are you picking Tatar? You should. Let's be honest. Everybody knows why. She won DDO last year. She won Worlds out here. And it doesn't seem to be a course that she doesn't thrive at. But she is a 992 rated FPO. That's a big pill to swallow. If you want to save a few ratings points, you could pick up Katrina Allen, who hasn't finished worse than second here in 4 years, and she's only rated 969. Ella was third here last year, so it wouldn't be shocking to pick her. Holland Hanley took second or third at Worlds out here, so she's another player that you could probably snag on your team and feel comfortable. My sleeper for FPO this week, though, is Madison Walker. Not normally the kind of course I would pick her at, but she has a really good history out here. She's averaged 10th over the last 4 years and is only rated 937. Vanessa Van Dyken has been having a really solid season. She's averaged 12th out here and is playing really well recently, and she's only 944 rated. There are 2 players that have no experience here in Emporia, but could finish well, are Allie Smith, having a great season, and Caroline Henderson, who started out with a big flash and has really gone quiet the last couple weeks. Allie is really consistent, but Henderson has the arm. Now, some FPO players I'm probably avoiding, not going to put them on my team. Aria Castorita. She finished 35th here last year. Now, granted, it was her first year on tour, so take that with a grain of salt. But I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach one more year for her. And Stacy Ronsley, who is 947 rated. But the last time she played here, she finished 26th. It was 2 years ago, and her game is much more mature now. But it's a wait-and-see. And finally, a tougher one for me to keep off my team, Missy Gannon. She's coming off a good week at Zootown. But in Emporia, she just hasn't played well. And her rating is in the 970s, so it's a very, very tough pick. I just can't justify picking her, which means she's probably going to take second place this week. Let's look at some of my picks from last week. At Portland, well, technically 2 weeks ago, at Portland, I really nailed my players to avoid. Marweed, Sexton, who missed cash for the first time, and Hokum. And my surefire picks, no shock. I picked the big arms in Portland. They all finished well. I picked Pierce and Jen Allen. Both of them did fine. Really, you can't go wrong with those picks. My sleepers, though, Lindsay Fish. She missed the cut at Portland. But I also picked Max Regetnig, and he did make the cut and actually finished 35th, which was better than where his rating would have positioned him. Now, for you draft league players, the waiver wire for MPO, I think there's a really good pick out there. And again, these are players who are rostered in less than 60 to 65% of leagues. Ezra Robinson. He's only owned in about 58% of the leagues and has a good history in Emporia. Not a bad grab if you're in need of a player for a single week. And maybe you had Eagle, who's now hurt, or Paul, who's over in Europe, and you're just looking to fill a roster spot. Ezra's the guy to go with. And I mentioned her earlier, but Madison Walker is available in 58% of all leagues. She's a riskier pick than most, and I wouldn't normally pick her for a DDO-style course, but her experience here could be really useful, and she's played well in the past. A little bit riskier of a pick is Paige Shue. And she's out there in a lot of leagues. These are her old stomping grounds. She knows these courses inside and out. It might be worth it to take a flyer on her this week. And if you want to take a look at all the data that I use to get this information, you can go out to skipace.com/DDOpast. As always, this is the exclusive place that I share that information with you. Huge shout out this week to our Skip Ace Pro Only event matchup sponsor. It's Arts Fudge. Arts Fudge, not a fudge company, guys. Actually, they provide information for fantasy disc golf. If you go to artsfudge.com, you can check out all the information and articles that he's out there writing. He also provided you with a draft book earlier in the season. Just a really solid place for information. And this week they're sponsoring the Birdie 2.0 board game with 2 expansions, I believe. So if you're interested and you're a Skip Ace Pro member, you can go out to the event matchup and grab the one here for DDO. Thanks a lot to Arts Fudge. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you guys again before the next Elite Series, which is in Des Moines, the most boring city in the United States. Welcome to Des Moines.